Welcome to another episode of Blue is the New White. Today, I've got Mike Moreno with me from Much More Media. We're going to talk a little bit about what he does and his experience in the trades from a few different perspectives. So, Mike, welcome to the show, and why don't you introduce yourself?
Gosh, man, thank you so much for having me. First, let me also thank you so much for just creating this outlet, like your book and this podcast. I mean, I think what you're doing is telling this story at a really high level, in a really personal way, and it's really engaging. I'm just like absolutely enthralled to be a part of it. So my little spiel here is that I come from a creative background. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, the entertainment capital of the world, as you would have it. My dad worked in the film and television industry for ages and ages, as long as I was certainly alive. And so I grew up in that world of storytelling. And I then went to school for it, right? I earned a BFA, MFA. And then I came out of that and was working here in New York City, where I've been for the past 10, 11 years now. And was creating shows, producing theater, producing web series, working in film and television as both an actor and a production person. And then finally got to the point where I cobbled together some friends and compatriots of mine and created a video production business making essentially Facebook commercials for, brands and businesses around New York City. And then I elevated that into a business that both my wife and I run now called Much More Media, where we do content creation and PR for brands and businesses. And really the fundamental thing that has brought me to this point and where I'm going in the future, honestly, Josh, is that I've built a business out of teaching storytellers how to be better businesses and how businesses can become better storytellers. So I work with actors and other creatives in the community through a podcast that I run called the Actor CEO Podcast. My whole focus there is artists, creatives. You are businesses, and you need to treat yourself as such in order to build a sustainable career. But then the other half of that, of course, is Much More Media, where I go to business owners and brands and industries, especially those in transition right now, trying to figure out how to tell their story in the digital marketing landscape, if you will. That they have a story to tell and a story that matters, and a story that people relate to and resonates with them, and how they can tell that and how they can effectively tell that without spending a ton of money and getting caught up in the minutia of things, how to do it skillfully, so that they can bring all that attention and all the recognition that they really want into their business and grow it that way.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think that I'm really going to enjoy this conversation because, I talk a lot about the perceptions, right, of the industry. And really, when it boils down to it, it's because the story hasn't been told correctly. At least, that's definitely one element of it. The whole grand scheme of things, everything that I talk about in my book, on my podcast, all of that, it boils down to, the perception of the trades is the way that it is because no one has told it in the type of format, the story in the type of format that's needed to gain and capture the attention of today's youth. So what do you think, I mean, just from your, because we met, 2 weeks ago for the first time at the Fed conference, which is all about the food equipment industry coming up into the digital age.
Mm-hmm.
So from your experience, from talking to maybe some of your clients and some of the people we met there, what do you see as the biggest problem with the storytelling in this industry?
Yeah, well, I think you hit it on the head right in the beginning here. The idea that no one is out there advocating for the story from this industry, the story of the trades, right? The story of folks who, for instance, work in the food equipment service and repair industry, that it's a real thing, that it happens every day. It's something that most people in their everyday life interact with at least once throughout the day. Uh, and that it's made up of people, of real people, of people who are living great lives because of it. And it didn't require them to go the route that most certainly young people are told these days, which is the route of college or bust. It didn't require them to do that. And yet they have, in many cases, more fulfilling lives than many who chose that college or bust route when compared, sort of apples to apples. And I think that's something that really inspires me. That's something that gets me excited. I mean, the way that I got connected to it was through Rich Malachy, was finding, out about him through content, right? He was out there trying to amplify his own message and get people to know about it. And so I reached out and we got connected, and that's how you and I ended up in the same place at the same time. But coming from a background like working here in New York City, prior to starting my, production company here and my media company, I was building sets. I was building sets for film and television, and I was also building live event sets like Fashion Week, the Victoria's Secret fashion show, and Calvin Klein, Armani, and all these other things that happen here in New York City. There's a ton of live events that happen in New York City, and they oftentimes create experiences out of that, and certainly sets and places where all that goes down. So I spent a ton of time building that stuff and working with tradespeople who build that stuff, people who make the impossible possible. And the passion that I got from those folks, and certainly the amount of pride and skill that they bring to their everyday lives, was really made an impact on me, honestly. I mean, they're some of the best people to work with ever, because they really care about what they do, and they know so much. And so to think that young folks are not even introduced to the idea that there's an entire world out there of professions that you can be a part of, whether you want to get your hands dirty or not, as you point out so skillfully in the book. There are many different levels of your involvement in those professions, but these are professions that make the world run on a daily basis, and that you can get really skilled at and really live a high quality of life without having to go through this process of putting yourself in massive debt and running into this idea that, you have to learn something according to a piece of paper and according to a structured educational environment. Otherwise, you won't be successful. Obviously, it's entirely untrue. And I think that more people need to know about that.
Absolutely. Very, very well said and very well put. So now you went the college route, obviously, and you said your dad was in film,
Mhm.
and so you kind of grew up knowing what you were going to do, right, with your past. So from a young age, you kind of, had that trajectory, instilled in you, and all that. Is that correct?
Well, to be fair, it's changed, honestly. Like first I started in doing stand-up comedy when I was like 14 years old. That's what I thought my life was going to be. And then I got moved more into more to the acting side. And then that's what I thought it was going to be. But then I learned so much about the entire prospect of creative storytelling, right? Like producing. I was producing my own work. I was doing videography. I was hiring people to do that for me, to create things, whether it be live events like theater and stuff like that, or film and television. And so then it became more of the producing aspect. And then, of course, it became actually running a company that does that for other people. So even for me, it's changed. So even the thing on my degree is not the thing technically, specifically, that I'm actually doing, living my fulfilling life. And that's why I'm such an advocate for this message, because I too believe that the route that I went through is not the only route. It was not even necessary to get me to where I am. And in some ways might have delayed my ability to get to where I am.
Interesting. Very interesting take. And I think it's important. There's an important lesson in there, for the youth of today, which is, things change, your wants change, your idea of success changes, as you grow, which is why it's so hard to go down a list of college classes when you're 18 years old and try to pick a major that you
Yeah,
are
man.
seemingly going to do the rest of your life. It seems almost a gamble in a lot of senses, in the event that you don't absolutely positively know exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life. Some kids, by the time they're 3 or 4 years old, they say, "Oh, I'm going to be a doctor." That's it, and they live their whole life on that route because they know that's exactly what they want to do. But
Mhm.
for the majority of us, that's just not the case, and we're told to use college as a tool to help us figure it out. But the problem is, and I think that college can be a useful tool to figure it out. But the problem is what? The problem is it's expensive. It's wildly expensive,
Yeah.
and so that damages, I think, the ROI that you can get from college if what you figure out doesn't have anything to do with your major.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's just been, this is a grander conversation to be sure, but it's just been structured in a way where the colleges are businesses in their own right. And so they are there to just turn people through the business because that is how the business stays profitable.
Yeah.
That unfortunately is not conducive to a well-rounded, student or experienced person who comes out of that system, certainly with very little debt, because the college wants to charge you for everything. We're going to, and there's this competition level of trying to get you all these wonderful things to have this enormous, experience. But all that costs money. I mean, and that gets passed on to the student. So anyway, so you end up with this experience where you're sort of done learning. You feel like you're done learning because of the structure of learning in that environment, and you also have to be doing something right away, whether it's what you want to do or not, because of the amount of debt that you're in. And so these are two very poor positions to put yourself in when you are a young person, because that is the time when uh, you have more potential than ever to try things out, to learn very quickly, and especially in the world that we live in right now. Like, let's be very clear about this. The capability that you and I have, Josh, to have this conversation via the internet, via the satellites and the video capacity at a high level of quality that we have, and then the fact that you can share this in so many different ways with people all over the world who get a chance to engage in this conversation is phenomenal and is ever changing and is greater than it's ever been. So the idea that a college is an institution, one of the few in which you can go and learn high quality information, is fundamentally untrue. Now, that's how it used to be, but it is no longer true. So anyone can go out and learn from experts via the same medium that we're using now,
Yep.
to improve their daily lives, to improve their skills, to improve their capacity. Yeah, we're carrying around access to experts in our pockets every day.
Uh-huh.
That is phenomenal. My 4-year-old son, will, some point in the near future, probably have the capability of taking a class with Neil deGrasse Tyson, whether it's in person or whatever, if he cares to learn about what Neil is an expert in. That's amazing. I did not have that opportunity when I was younger. People 20 years older than us that never had that opportunity, but it exists now. So again, the fundamental building block upon which these institutions and the authority that they carry, and the value that they supposedly have, as the only ways of improving your life, that building block doesn't hold up anymore. It's not true. So everybody has now access to these major capacities of improving themselves.
Absolutely. And I think it's only a matter of time before, the reality of the situation kind of breaks through, because let's be honest, as these newer and younger generations are brought up, they're basically born with a cell phone in their hand, or electronics around them,
Mm.
so they've developed almost a sense of what's true and what isn't via social media, because they speak the language. You talked about it in Miami. They speak the language. They're able to cut through the BS of what is a perception and what is reality, what is fictitious, what is the truth, more so than we have the ability, because we weren't brought up that way. I mean, I still remember my first computer, an old like 386 PC with the big 5.25 inch floppy disks. I had a Simpsons game that I used to play that was fantastic. C colon backslash run
Right.
backslash you know I mean, it's different now. And um I think that as we go through the other generations, like I said, they're going to develop a sense for it. And so, which means they're impressionable, which means it's all the more important for people like us to spread the much needed messages that we talk about. My respective message, your respective message, and everybody else who has an opportunity to get theirs out as well, by telling their story. So I'm curious about your days when you were doing the set building and
Mm.
stuff like that. You had said that you noticed the passion in the people around you, which is one of the big things that I talk about in the trades. Being able to find your passion in it. So, did you find that mentality kind of rubbing off on you? I mean, you're a passionate guy to begin with, and I see that in you. But as far as being surrounded by those types of people, what kind of feeling did that create?
It absolutely rubbed off on me, and you know, I think what's very profound about it. Maybe I didn't so much realize it at the time, but certainly looking back, it makes more sense. Oftentimes, folks in the trades are, whether they're building sets or whether they're working on food equipment or whether they're constructing a building or whether they're installing the electricity or the HVAC, um, they are unseen players, and they are very much structured that way. It's not the thing that the business, you're helping build a business, but that's so the business can put a sign out front and sell chicken inside. Like it's not so that they can showcase their HVAC system. That's not their business. So you are in many ways an unseen part of the equation. But what's miraculous about it is that it would not exist if you did not put your skills and passion and vision and care into it. It just wouldn't exist. And if you were not skillful and passionate and caring about it, then you wouldn't do a good job. And so it certainly wouldn't exist for very long. It would fall down. Uh, and that's so there's that's something that struck me oftentimes, is that when I would work with people, whether I knew them or not, being in the nature of the business that I was in, I would encounter so many people from so many different trades because we were coming into an environment and changing it completely, right? Turning it into something that it wasn't, building something that wasn't there before, right? Making the impossible possible. And so were they, whether they were fixing the elevator or painting the walls or putting vinyl graphics up on columns or installing, video projectors or whatever it was. Like, these were skilled tradespeople who were making the impossible possible and really cared about doing that and cared that nobody would notice it, right? That's what they cared about. They would do their job so well that no one would even know that this wasn't here before or that something was wrong and they fixed it. It's all seamless. It's magic. That's the magic of society, is what they do.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful. That's an immense amount of honestly, control over people's everyday lives. But like, there's some to own that you are able to do something so well that people don't even notice that anything was wrong. That there's a lot of I think pride and a lot of I love the idea of owning that capacity and that capability to do that in your everyday life, in your work life.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. So what fundamentals do you think are involved in that? What fundamentals do you think are taught by that type of work? I mean, you lived it, right? And you did this, this building of the sets and working with your hands. And what did that teach you fundamentally?
Well, the first thing that you have to have going into, I think, any sort of like skilled trades on a deep level, you actually care about helping people. And I think when you really look at it, whether you're thinking about going into the any sort of industry that is, built on skilled trades, or whether you've been in it for a period of time, when you look at it, and when you're quiet with yourself and you think about it, you really do fundamentally care about helping people, and that may be helping someone's vision come to life, whether it's building sets or creating some other type of something out of nothing, right? Whether it's helping them when they are in need, like repairing something. You care that they have a business, or that a hospital needs help, right? Like things need to run because they're out there helping other people. And so your services are in demand, and you can come in and help them continue to help other people. And then there's also the aspect of that you are working with people. Rarely, if ever, are you a solo operator, right? Usually you will at least be partnered up with somebody, and most likely be on some sort of team, or with some sort of company that has a number of other people as well. And you are helping them by being a part of it, by always caring about what it is that you're doing, by always improving your skills, by always interacting with your clients or the people on the street that you got to do business with, or work with, in a polite and professional way. You're helping their perception of skilled tradespeople by interacting in a polite and professional way. So fundamentally, you are helping people, and that's a skill. That's not really a skill. I think it's inherent in most people, but I think it's really amplified by those in the trades. And again, the things that I took away from it was something that I am always appreciative of. I'm a lifelong learner. So whether I think that you should go to college or not, I certainly believe that you should always be learning, right? And I think that now we have more capacity, as I mentioned earlier, than ever to be a lifelong learner. And the thing that I loved about working in the trades was, and working with tradespeople, was that they were always curious, so intelligent, and could process information very quickly. So if it was something that you needed to learn or wanted to learn, you would be able to learn it very quickly. I would come in and always say, like, if I didn't know something, someone was like, you don't know the thing. I was like, listen, all you have to do is show me once. That's all you have to do.
Yep.
Show me once. I never ask another question again. Show me once. I will do it. Very few other people, and certainly oftentimes through the educational constructs of college and other things, the way that folks are trained to learn, the show me once thing is not, doesn't happen a lot. There's a lot of repetitive information, right? In the way that we learn through school. But the people that I worked with and the environments that I was in, that was very much the common denominator was show me once and we will get it done. And that creates problem solvers all over the place. People think for themselves. They own that, they have responsibility for what they're doing, right? They care about, communicating effectively and clearly to other people, especially talking to folks who may not know what it is that you're talking about, right? Because here's the other factor is that, you might be working on something. Everybody in the trades has experienced this. Whether it's you're trying to repair something, or you're trying to build something out of nothing, or you're trying to do something new, there is some authority figure at some point down the line that has no idea what you're talking about, but has control over whether you move forward or not, right?
Yep.
So this person, whoever they may be, or group of people, needs to understand clearly why you need to do X, Y, Z, right? In order to allow you the freedom to go ahead and do your job. So it's very important for someone in this industry to have those clear communication skills, to know how can I effectively tell you and communicate to you what we need to do, why it's important, and why it's valuable to you? And how can I have enough empathy and emotional intelligence to understand what your concerns are and why you're really concerned about them, right? What your fears are. Because again, if we're coming from helping each other, everybody's helping everybody help each other. I know that you want to be sure that you can continue to help people, right? I know that these are the things that you want, the desires that you want for your business. You want to be sure that you have enough money to pay your employees and blah, 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 whatever the case may be. I get that. So understanding your perspective and understanding how I can clearly communicate creates an exceptionally high level of professional capacity. And again, I experienced that with those folks in the trades more often than not because they have to do it more often than not.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And there's a lot to be said about that, because technology is one of those things that's helping us communicate, these things that need to be communicated, especially to those that they need to be communicated to. And we're seeing this more and more intercompany, right? With like Slack
Mm-hmm.
some of these ERP systems and CRM systems that are coming out. Everything is being designed to communicate internally. And I think that people like in the digital media space are the ones who are going to bridge the gap on the things that need to be communicated to the people we want to attract to the industry, by showcasing some of the fundamentals that we just talked about, namely, helping people, because that is, I think, by nature, most humans, assuming you're not a psychopath, they want to help people, right?
Right.
But nobody really understands, and when I say nobody, I just mean most people don't understand how the trades accomplish that. At least I didn't, when I was brought up in high school. No one ever talked to me about that. Really, I didn't know that the trades were anything more than just turning wrenches. And the truth of the matter is that, you know at the heart of it, the trades really are all about helping people. So through avenues that you can provide, um, I think that we can get that message across to the general population that, hey, this is what the trades are.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you see, as the best platform to do that, the best way to do that in the digital media space?
Well, I think it's important to know who you're communicating to and where they are and where they get their information. But generally speaking, we have video, audio, and written avenues of communicating information. All three of those we have more access to than ever before. All three of those have more reach than ever before, and all three of those everybody really who has access to the internet or throughout most of their daily life engages with all three of those more often than they ever in the history of ever, in the history of eyeballs and ears, to put it to the audio aspect. They engage with it more than ever. So knowing who it is that you want to communicate to will determine like where you put that information out. But this is one of the reasons why the company that I run, Much More Media, our fundamental philosophy is that we're helping you unlock the media empire already alive inside your business. And we call it a media empire because you now have access to a television station, a radio station, and a newspaper already within inside of your business. It's all right here. This is it. You have it. No one has asked you to, pay $100,000 or $1 million to get access to all of this. You have it right now.
Mm-hmm.
So now is the time to turn that media machine on, and we help people do that. Turn that on, turn it around, right? So that instead of you receiving information from it, you can now broadcast through it and get your information out. And one of the benefits and one of the ways that we find really works and is really successful is honing your message, honing that story, who you're communicating it to, right? What is the story that you want them to engage with? What is the story you want them to learn from? And then how can you put that content out in a way that allows you to reach the most amount of people in the way that's best for them, right? So we usually start with video because video becomes video, it becomes the audio, and it becomes the written word. So if you were to start with a video, you could then take the audio out of that and make it a podcast if you wanted to, if that was something that would work really well for your audience and the story and the message that you're communicating. And of course, you could take the text out of that and turn it into a blog post. So now those who would rather read, or those who are more likely to find that information via blog post or written context or articles, can now have access to that. And then of course, all these get turned into smaller and smaller pieces so that the social media landscape can get little chunks, digestible pieces of information that you've put out, and entice them to come and learn more and get more and more information till they finally engage with you at a much higher level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. In a sense, it's simple, right? I mean, especially the way that you laid it out, because you can shoot a video and you can derive all these different things from it, as long as you know, number one, who you're talking to, right? Because that's what's going to drive a lot of engagement and really determine whether what you're talking about is relevant or not.
Yeah.
And so I think typically the trades, at least in the general mechanical sense, trades are dominated by uh, people of an older mindset. Mindset that grew up in a day and age where social media wasn't a thing. Video so easily accessible wasn't a thing. Audio so easily accessible wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what appears easy in a sense to us could be completely mind-boggling to them. And I think that might be where a lot of our roadblocks come in, because we do want to get this stuff out there. We want to point the camera in the right direction. We want to show the things that that could entice others to enter the industry, or customers to use us, or whatever the objective is. But there's just, number one, there's a closed mindedness, I think, that comes with the fear of the unknown, if you will, because they don't know how to use it to their advantage. So how do we break through that? How do we get over the mindset that the camera can be scary?
That's a great question. So I'll tackle it from your perspective, which I think is absolutely accurate, which is the fear of the unknown. How do you solve the fear of the unknown? Well, you operate from what you know. The way that anybody, be they older or younger, be they trying to communicate to the business environment who's looking to hire them for their services or buy their products, or whether they're looking to communicate information to the younger marketplace is the new blood that's going to be coming in, so that they can help them have these businesses, and a lot of times family businesses, even survive the next 10, 15 years. Operate from what you know. If you are somebody who runs this business or somebody who works in this business every day, you know what makes this business run, right? You know the people who make this business work. You know the things that the wins that each of your team members or that your company does every day that is exciting to you, that gets you up to come into work. That is a project that you're checking off the list. That is something that you're like, man, we nailed that. We did that install. We developed this product that is amazing, that does these things. That's something that excites you from being inside of it day in and day out. Oftentimes, and someone who has worked in the obviously in the trade side of things and did those things day in and day out, and somebody who runs a business day in and day out, we can sometimes lose perspective of really the grandness of it all, of really the amazing things that we're actually doing. So it's helpful to take a step back and go, what is really happening here? Like, did we repaint the office? Is that something that's cool? Are we growing and we've expanded our offices and now we're hiring on new people? That's cool. That's a business that's moving forward. That's a business that's doing well. That's a business that other businesses probably want to do business with. So take that perspective and allow yourself the ability to appreciate what you're actually doing and who you're doing it with and what the folks around you are actually doing. And and the problems that you solve day in and day out, because I guarantee you there's a ton of them that you solve day in and day out. Appreciate that. When you turn that perspective on, you'll start seeing content around you all day, every day. Then you're loaded with it. You have a wealth of content. Now it's just a matter of like, okay, who needs to see what?
That is awesome. I'm so glad that you just answered that, because I just learned something. I've been learning a lot from you, actually. You see me writing down all my notes and stuff. But one of my biggest questions is, because I want to be honest, it appears on the outside like I'm getting the content out there that I want to get out there. And I think me and you had this conversation in Miami, but I don't have that trigger in my brain yet to look at something and say, oh, that's good content. I look at something really cool, or that I think is just awesome, or that somebody is doing something, and I just sit there and I stare, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's awesome. I don't have that trigger in my brain saying I should be filming this, or I should be posting about this, and so that's what I'm constantly trying to work on. But my takeaway, from what you said, is that I know the wins, the feeling that I get when somebody in the office, uh, lands a new customer, or when we open up a new branch, or when an employee who previously left comes back to the company because they thought the grass was greener and it really wasn't. And so, they want to come back. These are the things that I see every day and that I appreciate every day, but I don't think to, share. And I don't know what that is, if it's some reservation of that I don't want to say the wrong thing, because of all eyes on me kind of thing, or if it's, just I don't have that switch in my brain.
Well, so let's address that a little bit. So I think the first thing that'll happen is you'll turn that switch on, and you've already done so. I mean, you've just listed these things. Now you're aware of it, right? Once you become aware, you can never become unaware of it. So now you're aware of it. You see these things happen day in and day out. And the second part of this process is the idea of perfection, right? This perfectionist mentality. Many people, including myself, and every time you create content, there's a little voice in the back of your head that says, like, what if it's not right? What if it doesn't look good? What if I make a mistake? What if I'm doing something that doesn't work? Who cares? Here's the other benefit. You are not spending $280,000 on a 20-second TV commercial that you have to get right. Otherwise, you've wasted an enormous amount of cash, right? We don't live in that world. Most of the stuff that you will make, you won't pay a dime for to actually put out there. And if you do, it's a fraction of that number, right? It is, and you can do it multiple times over and retarget people and do so many wonderful things that digital marketing allows us to do. But the idea of perfectionism is your first problem. It's going to stop you from actually taking action. The best thing is that because we live in this fluid digital environment, let's say you do something and it doesn't work, but that's going to allow you to continue. As long as you keep doing it, you're going to allow yourself to learn, like, oh, this type of people, this group, this audience likes more of this type of content. That seems to be valuable to them. It's something I certainly want to get out there. Great, I will do more of that. You would not have learned that if you had worried about making something that was absolutely perfect. Then there's this group of people. Oh, they like more of this type of content. Great, I can do more of that. Now you know that, and you can just double down on what works and forget what doesn't. The only way you're going to do that is actually by making something, by doing something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And getting over that perfectionist ideal mentality. There's something we say often. It's certainly not my phrase, but it's a good phrase, which is done is better than perfect. The best thing you can do is make it, get it out there, and then move on. There's absolutely nothing wrong. And Rich points this out too. Show your mistakes. Hey, we did something. We tried to install something. It didn't work. It was too small, it was too big. It didn't fit. Or like we made a mistake with a customer. They got upset. Our bad. And now we're moving on. Or I put this stuff out there. Hey, I said something in a video like 2 months ago. Turns out it's not actually right. It's wrong. I'm here to correct that. I have the freedom to do that. I'm the one controlling the conversation here. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. When you put it like that, it is, and I can take a step back and I can look at the situation as a whole and realize, you know, hey, a lot of that is just my own anxieties, and like, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect, and you know, at the end of the day, it's I mean, you said it perfectly. I don't know how to say it any better. Done is better than perfect. So, I wrote that down. I'm gonna put that in a big sticky note above my desk, and that's gonna save
That's a
my
great
ass.
idea.
You
Yeah.
know, and no, that's really awesome.
I have to
So
remind myself of that too on a daily basis. Absolutely. So like, don't ever get to the point where you're thinking, oh, well, so-and-so is 10, 15, 20 steps ahead of me. I'm never going to be able to do it like them. They have to remind themselves of those very same things, just like anybody else who runs a business, right? If you've been in the business for 20 years, if you've been in the business for 5 years, the way you're going to get to being in the business of 50 years is by doing those things every day, learning from your mistakes, continuing forward, and that is fine. That is how everybody has built their business.
yeah, absolutely, fail forward.
It's just
And
not stopping is the key.
that is the key: consistency and not giving up. Using every piece of failure as a learning opportunity to move forward and point yourself in the direction of success. And for what it's worth, I think that most of us have been conditioned from a very young age. If we were in a school system of really any kind, to chase perfection. And, because you think about when you take a test or anything else, do homework, you're graded on a scale from 1 to 100, 100 being perfect, 0 being not. And, you know, basically, the further away you are from 100, the more you get scolded, or the worse, that you're perceived. And so everyone is always chasing that perfection. It's never really taught in school to fail. You're taught not to
Right.
fail. So it's a hard mindset, I think, for a lot of people to get over, just because it's been instilled in us, from such a young age on different levels, but still same concept. So, um, I'm curious. We're gonna get close to wrapping it up here pretty soon. If you could say one thing to young people out there about chasing success, what would that be?
Define it for yourself. Define it for yourself, and I would even steer away from the idea of chasing success, because that implies that it's always something that is out of reach that
I
you're
like that.
trying to go after. um, if you define it for yourself, then it's something that you already have, and you're just implementing it day in and day out, which is building the vision around you then and the life that you want to live. But you already have success. I mean, other people say it, and I'm certainly not the first, but you've already won. If you're living, breathing, and hearing this message, you've already won.
Yeah.
You've already won. You could have been a frog. You're not. You're a person. And you're a person with a
Who says
mind and a
that?
spirit. Yeah. And so much capacity and so much capability. You've already won. So how you implement that success and is up to you, which is why, the idea of chasing it is, it can change, 2 weeks from now. If you go, you know what, I'm not in the right job, I need to get into a different job. I'm in college, this isn't actually the right path for me. And I believe you made this decision. I need to choose a different path. You were in stunts and you were like, this is actually not working out for me, this is not the right path for me, I need to choose something else. That's that in and of itself, that is success. You've decided, oh, I was going in a direction that wasn't good for me, I'm now choosing to go in a different direction. Success. So that is it's always with you. It's something that you define every single day, and it's something that you get to choose for yourself.
Awesome. I love that answer. I can't even tell you how much I love that answer. That's fantastic advice. Is there anything that you want to add before we wrap it up?
I just think I think we live in a really dynamic age right now. Something I'm really passionate about is, as I said at the top, is storytelling, honestly. And I'm here, and I've realized really rather recently that, you know, my main mission, my core goal here on this planet is actually to help storytellers and help people become better storytellers. It's something that I've you know, had a lot of experience in. It's something that is kind of ingrained inside of me, and all of a sudden I've realized, like, oh my gosh, there are so many people that can benefit from this. So if there's anything I can do to help folks out, they can always reach out to Much More Media, and of course reach me at mike@muchmore.media. But you know, I think telling your story and storytelling has become one of the most valuable commodities in our current landscape. And it's because we have these mediums, we have these capabilities, the technology is there, culture is shifting to really value story and storytellers and the information we're getting that way at a much higher level than we ever have before. So I think it's really important that anybody who owns a business, anybody who runs a business, anybody's in a part of an industry, step into that landscape, own their own story, and start telling it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And for anybody that wants to get a hold of Mike to learn more, his links will definitely be in the bio of this podcast, both in YouTube and on Spotify. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to hear from you. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you lending your valuable time as a business owner. And, you know, I think that a lot of people are going to gain a lot of insight from what you had to say.
Thanks, Josh. My pleasure.
All right. We'll see you next time, buddy.
Sounds good.